we're going to start working on this exercise here in Unit 5. Let's look at the instructions. It says the Special Olympics recently hosted a basketball tournament. They used the proceeds from the concessions sold to help fund the organization and provide services for the athletes. They recorded all of the sales for the tournament in a spreadsheet and are asking for help in analyzing the data. Use the attached spreadsheet below. So there's one down here. It says clean the data, create a pivot table, use VLOOKUP to find the amount of calories for each item sold, determine the profit of each item sold, and a sum of total profit made for the tournament. And it's, it sounds pretty simplistic, but it's a bit of work, right? So here I am, I'm downloading it. I'm going to go ahead and first move this into a folder that makes sense for me. And so here's my downloads folder. And then I got another file window here where I have my data analytics course and my spring semester. And I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder for Unit 5. So the work's going to go in there. So I'm going to take the starter version here. Now, this is what I do, and you guys don't have to do it this way, but I'm going to actually rename this. And I do goofy stuff like this, where I'm going to keep the original copy. I'm just going to call it orig, right? And then I'm going to take that and I'm going to copy it and paste it in so I can always go back, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the file name. I'm just going to call it in progress or whatever works for you, right? And then when I have a solved version, I'll save it as solved, right? And that's how I like to work. So I got multiple copies. I know it's kind of silly, but this also allows me to step backwards. If I screw something up, I can take it to a certain point. All right, I'm going to open up the in progress one and take a look at the information that's inside here. So let's see what we have. All right, so this information is given to us. So right off the bat, I don't know if you guys are catching this, right? So we have the items listed, the category that it's in. I assume this is the selling price. I'm not really sure what the profit is or what the calories are. Now I'm noticing that there's a calories tab. All right, so they have the calories of all the items, right? And then we have a cost tab. So this is what it must cost us. And notice these are on separate tabs, right? So like we're just storing that information on separate tabs. So if we want to pull that information in here, we can do a VLOOKUP on those tabs and pull the information in dynamically, right? That's, I think, what we're going to do here. As I look at the data, and this is why I always say whenever you get a data set, you should peruse it and take a look at what you're working with. Right off the bat, I see a problem, right? Beer. It looks like somebody just like landed their hands on the keyboard and started typing nonsense, right? Okay, it happens. If they're like chronicling it in Excel and somebody opened up the file before you, didn't know what they were doing, and they just, whatever, like I just did. All right, but I can figure out what this is. So I have other examples. Like here's beer. It looks like beers are $4. So I'm going to start cleaning the data. So I'm going to start fixing it manually. Okay. Right, let's keep scrolling here. Looks like everything's pretty good to me. Oh, here's another one. Chocolate bar, candy. All right, what is a chocolate bar? Looks like a chocolate bar is $2. All right, so I'm just going to copy that. And it looks like a hot dog is $1.50. And see, this is the process of, unfortunately, you do get data like this for whatever reason. And it doesn't even matter how it got like this. It's like this, right? Doesn't mean that we can't recover from it, though. Okay, so how much is licorice rope? That's $2. Here's another one of these weird. Okay, bottled water looks like $3. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Here we have a popcorn. Popcorn is $5. Yeah, pizza. Would there be an easier way for me to do this? Think about this. Any thoughts on like, because I'm
Could you like
okay.
filter it?
Yeah, Laura, now you're onto it, right? Yeah, you could sort the item column, right? So, like for example, I could just um, I could do a sort A to Z. So now everything's together. And so if there's a beer with a missing price, that's really easy to fix now, right? And bottled water, yeah, that'd be a lot. Yeah, or I could filter, I could sort or filter, but either way, just something that would help increase my speed. Because the other way I was doing it, I'd find the mistake and then I'd look for another one manually. Yeah, it was a little cumbersome. Now, granted, we don't have that many entries to deal with here, but what if, can you imagine if this was like for Miller Park or something and it was like a playoff game and it was like 60,000 people each buying like 20 things or whatever, like, oh my God, you would not want to do that manually. You'd find some way to automate that process. The other thing that's kind of interesting here is most of the anomalies have been where in the price column, right? The other thing that this helps us do by sorting is it makes us make sure that whatever the product is in the right category too, right? I'm not seeing any category mistakes so far. How about you guys? None. It's all been prices. All right, well, here's a pizza mistake fixed. And then here's a soda. All right. All right. So now it's organized. All the data has been cleaned. So I would say that our step one, which is clean the data, check for missing data, bad data, etc. And it says you should be able to extrapolate the answers. Sometimes volunteers forgot to enter amounts or mistyped or whatever. Okay. But we have it, right? So we're good, right? We did that part. All right. Next task is to create a pivot table to sum the amount of each item sold. So this is where I'm going to begin this process, and I'm looking at the clock because it's right at 7:30. I'll do the process of inserting the pivot table, right? Show you the two different ways to do it, and then I'll let you take it from there. Next week when we get together, I'll show you the solution. All right, so let's go back for a moment. And if you remember, if you're going to insert a pivot table, you do it from the insert menu. It's not in the data tab, right? And we can just choose the regular pivot table tool, right? Um, or we can use one of the recommendeds. Now, I want you to notice though that what we have going on here is we have um, all this data and we have to ask a few questions, right? And so this is where it gets a little weird. Can I populate the profit and the calories? And do I want to do that now, right? And then do I revise my pivot table after? So like my inclination would be, I would use the VLOOKUP before I would do the pivot table. But that's me, but that's not what the instruction says. So I'm just putting it out there, right? But this is our data set. It's contiguous, right? There's no gaps in data. It's a good solid data set. So I'm going to do, I'm going to look at recommended tables. And what did it ask us to sum by? Sum of each item sold, sum of price by category, sum of price by item, count of item by category. Nope. Sum of price by category. Well, it depends, right? I mean, it could be any one of these. Do any of these get us close?
I think the first one, the sum of price.
Agrees? Sum of
I
price
th
by category?
I think it was the second one, the price by item.
Yeah. And you notice I have the description right behind me. It says to sum the amount of each item sold. I'm going to choose this one It shows me a preview. I'm just going to say okay. All right. So inside here, it creates a new tab. Notice it's not labeled, so you want to label it. And now you have the pivot table tool available to you. And you'll notice that we have columns and rows. We have values. And we also have filters. The filters that hasn't even been talked about yet, but this is where it gets even more powerful. You guys know what a filter is, right? So I can filter, like for example, I could just filter for beer, or whatever. Or maybe if we had multiple events and I had the sales for multiple events, I could filter for that one event. But does this kind of do it? Yeah, it sort of does. It gives us the categories actually, right? It gives us each individual thing, how much was sold, and what the grand total was. So this is pretty useful, just like this. Would this be enough to satisfy that assignment piece? Laura's shaking her head. I'm not going to answer that question until next week, but it's certainly in contention. All right, so we're going to stop the video here, folks.